Welcome to the 23rd edition of On Data and Design. My name is Darian. I'm the co-founder of Superdot Studio, the author of the book Visualizing Complexity and the initiator of On Data and Design. And tonight, I'm your host. A special thanks to our sponsor of today, Frontify, delivering the future. Frontify, delivering the future of brand management today. Frontify offers designers full creative freedom while maintaining control over all brand and design assets in one beautiful place. That was the advertising part. Today, we will have talks about visualizing knowledge. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Valentina De Filippo, Barbara Vissirini, and Dario Rodighiero. Our speakers will have 20 minutes for their talks. During the talks, you have the possibility to ask questions. The link is below. It's on Slido. So you can also please participate and upvote the questions of others. And after the 3 talks, we will have time to discuss the mostly upvoted questions. But please don't ask only the question regarding technology and what technology the speakers used. There are maybe other questions too. So actually, that's the end of my long introduction. And now, Valentina, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Darian. So I'm going to share my slides. All right, so I love the invitation to tonight's because I really love the theme of the night, visualizing knowledge. Finally, a change to the classic visualizing data. All right, so who am I? Hello, everybody. My name is Valentina De Filippo. I'm an Italian designer based in London, and I'm many things, I suppose. Creative director, data designer, illustrator. These are a few of the labels that I've used to kind of explain what I do. I run my own practice, and I scale up and down depending on the scope of the projects that I get. I work across industry and formats, from print to digital, physical, and experiential work. As you can see here from this collection of work, the data design that I create really take different shapes based on the data that I'm visualizing, the audience that I'm reaching. From books design, I've illustrated and co-authored this book, The Infographic History of the World. And here you can see a very quick sneak peek of a project that I'm working right now, an encyclopedia for kids by Britannica. To also interactive tools, applications, physical manifestation of data, as well as experimental. We brought data visualization inside live theater performances. And even during my TEDx, I had an element of performative data visualization. So the common denominator of all these different projects is data. And yes, absolutely, it is the visualization of data or the presentation of data. But ultimately, it is to convey and transfer the knowledge to an audience. So the really purpose of my practice is to make sure that the figures, the facts that I'm displaying, they don't remain numbers, but the stories emerge and people can connect with them. So how do we transform data into knowledge? I guess there isn't one path only to get there. It all depends on the raw material that we're trying to transform and who we're trying to reach. But I suppose like a simple place to start understanding this journey is this simple framework, the knowledge pyramid, where data sits at the bottom, is this raw material, is any description of the world, any facets of the world can be described with data. Then we process this data, we find the insights, and we transform it into information. And then when this information is received by our audience, can provide new knowledge, new ways to see the initial experience, the world that we live in. And if we do use the knowledge to navigate the world, then it actually can create wisdom. So what is data? Well, data are description of our world, of people's lives. Data really stands for any sort of human experience that we want to investigate. We can have it readily available for us with research or through databases. We can access it electronically through APIs. And if we don't have it, we can actually gather it. We can collect some data from, as I was saying, any sort of experience. And what I want to also touch on tonight is the missing data. So it's not only the data that we have, but also the data that we don't have that sometimes can provide some knowledge. And the process to transform the data is really the design process, design thinking, problem solving. How do we convert again this raw material into something that is meaningful? And data for me is truly a creative material. It allows me to satisfy my curiosity for the world and also to share my discoveries with other people. And I believe the design is the unique voice that I can give to this raw material to connect with it. Because data ultimately doesn't speak by itself. And when I'm giving the voice, I need to consider who is at the end of this bridge of communication, who is my audience, and what is the goal of this communication act. So again, to summarize, is about the starting point, it is data, what is the data saying, who we are trying to reach, and why, the ultimate goal. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you examples of my work, and kind of like with these examples, I'm not going to try to create an exhaustive answer to how we transform data into knowledge, but offer a starting point for conversation. So starting with a couple of examples of research-based data. Is the classic example when we have a data set and we need to transform it into a visual story that can then again provide some sort of knowledge. Here is a collaboration with Scientific American, and the data set is talking about food waste. I was tasked to represent the data and how much food is wasted across the entire supply chain, across different food categories. So in my mind, I'm envisioning the food being kind of like piled up and wasted in the field. And that's exactly how I use the visual metaphor and the visual encoding, and combining pattern recognition, so how we are encoding the data with height and then the colors to exemplify the different scenarios, whether we do nothing about it or we do something about it. And then semiotics, which is the pile of food, as well as borrowing the color of this pile. So we see these four piles, and the lighter colors are diminishing in volume to identify these two possible positive scenarios, whether we are adopting some strategy to save some of this waste. My job doesn't finish there. I'm thinking, well, is it enough to actually just render these data points? Or could I communicate in a more effective way with a metaphor to create a tangible connection to the numbers? So I'm thinking, what if I could actually transform this pile into number of cows? Every minute the world wastes the equivalent weight of 65 cows. And this could take us to 82 cows by 2050 if we don't do anything. However, if we do adopt these strategies that the paper is suggesting, then we could bring these numbers down to 24 cows per minute. Or if we're really conservative and also optimistic about what we can do, then we can get to 8 cows per minute. So it's a grim data set, but there is some hope. And I guess how do we transform data into information here is to create a tangible connections with the data to facilitate the way that our brain can read the data. That obviously is not optimal in a table. It becomes much more visible in a visual form, and to get you there to the subject. So rather than just using an abstract shape, I'm trying to deploy semiotics. Similar approach to this data project that is possibly one of my most well-known infographics from my book, The Infographic History of the World, called Poppy Field. It's a visualization of the conflicts of the last centuries. Again, the starting point is a database, is a data set. In this case, we're not looking at the future, but we're looking at the past. History is a data set that compiled the wars of the last century. I gave it a form and a very specific form, again, combining semiotics and a quick pattern recognition given us by a standard scatter plot. But instead of just stopping at the scatter plot, I'm thinking, who is behind those bubbles? Where are those lives lost in war? Because really what I want to convey is the human sacrifice of conflict. Therefore, I dress up this scatter plot, this timeline, with flowers, and the poppy reminds us of the blood shed on the battlefield. The user is able to navigate this in an interactive way and to find different stories based on their own interest. I guess like the learning here is that our render doesn't stop at just like having deployed a nice visual or beauty, but it's really about whether this visual is compelling enough. It evokes emotion, it evokes empathy, makes people stop and think. Whenever we're communicating, we don't want to just communicate to our rational brain, but we want to engage the emotional side of people. And when we're engaging both is when we have a better chance to actually break through and for knowledge to stick and to become more memorable. So what if the starting point is not a data set, but we need to extract the data, so the data is not readily available for us? Well, we've got what we call databases, which are a collection of information. They're stored somewhere and we can access with code through an API. This is an example, a commercial example, a collaboration with Amazon Fashion in partnership with Make Associates. We were tasked to provide an alternative experience to browse their denim catalog for the fashion show in Berlin. So we created a 2-minute styling experience where the visitors of the show could actually find a perfect pair of jeans by conversating with Alexa. And by just answering 8 simple questions over 2 minutes, you are given the perfect pair or whatever would fit you, your taste. So I guess like the way that we're transferring knowledge here is to invite exploration in a non-classical way. So rather than using a browser, you're conversating, but also to facilitate decision-making, to really get us to what we need and what we want to buy in a much faster way. Another example of accessing information that is not readily available, but is out there, is in the internet, is when we access the Twitter API, we scraped it and we retrieved 200,000 tweets containing the MeToo hashtag. And we created MeToo. This was a collaboration with a brilliant developer, Lucia Konchinkova. And from this large amount of data, there was actually just a small drop in the vast amount of information that we had around the MeToo movement. We were able to paint 3 pictures to understand the trending voices, the geographical spread, and also the themes that were more popular among these conversations. Again, we offered an interactive way to investigate the data and to kind of like follow the evolution of this conversation along the 6 months after Alyssa Milano's first tweet. And I guess in this visualization, knowledge for me was actually recording all these voices and capture it almost in a time capsule that would celebrate them, would allow people to go back to it and to see them. And for me, the aesthetic of this piece also have an important role. I chose a dandelion because it kind of like conveyed my personal feeling about the Me Too movement. Every individual experience of abuse or violence was incredibly fragile when taken on its own. However, when all these voices came together, they were so strong they could actually create finally a catalyst for a social change. And that's exactly how I saw the dandelion conveying these two, the duality of the movement is a fragile element. You know, you can just blow it and all the seeds go, but all the seeds can actually take hold on any soil and give life to other dandelions. So I guess here, for me, the knowledge was also about expressing a point of view and to amplify the message. And perhaps here I can also touch on the responsibility that you have as creators of manifesting our point of view and transparency on that, because every act of communication is not unbiased. So we should embrace it rather than shy away. What if we don't have data? How can we gather knowledge from something that we actually want to investigate or we don't have data about? Well, we just need to pose the right questions. The starting point here wasn't a data set, wasn't a database, was a song. By listening over and over to Space Oddity by David Bowie and asking people how they felt, and also processing with technology, we were able to gather many layers of data. I collaborated with a musicologist, Miriam Quick, and we created 10 sculptures, LPs. Each sculpture represents a layer of the song, and then it was paired with animations and poster and an exhibition. And the intent here was really to make them visible, to make people see what we feel, but also what we imagine when we're listening to the song, and to celebrate David Bowie as an artist, to gain a deeper understanding of his craft and how masterfully this song was put together. Another commercial project here, Siemens, and this is a collaboration with a data design studio called Signal Noise, who now is part of the Economist Group. We were tasked to celebrate Siemens' capabilities in making our city smarter. Well, we didn't have the data for that, but we knew that we wanted to do something about the partnership with FC Bayern. So we went inside the stadium and we thought, wouldn't it be cool to celebrate this partnership by using the voice of the fans? How can we gather this information? Well, we harvest it. We use the sensors. There are these three-dimensional microphones that allows us to create an omnidirectional sound map of the stadium. And by overlaying the sound that we harvested and the Opta data, so the data of the football matches, then we were able to create a data documentary of 5 games. And it was an experience. So still football, but it's through a whole new perspective. And finally, the last point is about the missing data. So often in the data design or the data visualization world, we just rush into thinking, okay, this is all the data available, this is what we're going to do about it, or how we're going to present it, how we're going to be visualizing it. However, it's really important to consider what the data offer, but also what is missing. For the next project, I think that actually that was pretty crucial in my thinking, in my understanding of the topic, and also the sober reality that sometimes it's just not possible to provide an answer or a conclusive answer to a question as big as how has London been transformed through the pandemic, through the coronavirus. This was basically the brief that the Museum of London gave me. An incredible opportunity, but at the same time, like huge and intimidating and very doubting. How do you possibly visualize that? London is made of 9 million people. Every person had an individual experience of what the pandemic meant to them and how their life transformed. So I thought, what if I could create a landscape where these 9 million people could find their own stories by actually just allowing them to find themselves? To create space, really. So I created London Under the Microscope, again, some sort of data documentary, a time capsule, which encodes many layers of data, quantitative as well as qualitative, into this kind of like surreal geography of London that is being transformed to the morphology of the virus to create a suggestive and visceral landscape of the city. We've got the mobility on the membrane, we've got the COVID cases on the spikes, and the deaths. There are these particles appearing every day, and the vaccines. All this data has then been coded to be represented every day, so everything changed, and every day it's been visualized as 1 second of this data documentary. Not only that, once it was presented and visualized, we overlaid editorial information to provide even more context. And then by collaborating with Duncan here, a sound engineer, data designer, data journalist, Duncan is many things, we overlaid also sound. And I want you to feel and to see 30 seconds of this. This is at the end of 2020, just before the announcement of the last lockdown. And here you feel the urgency and the gravity of the situation. So again, was not a conclusive answer, but was my attempt to create a space for the viewer to reflect on their own individual experience, but also be reminded of the collective experience. So just to sum up, I don't really have an answer of how do we transform data into knowledge, but I guess like these are my guiding pillar in the design process. The more than visualizing data, what we want to do is communicating to transfer knowledge, and to do so, we don't want to stop at the first step of the visualization or of allowing people to see. That's crucial, and that's incredibly powerful, using well our pre-attentive attributes, right? The visual grammar, so that the brain has an effortless way to see the data. Semiotics, yes, but more than that, we need to think about who we're communicating to so that they can feel the data and the implication of this data. I'm looking at a bar chart. Do I understand the implication that these bars have? And then is the what. So what? After we've seen it, what do we want them to do? What is the shift of perception that we want to make? And it's only then when we're creating really like a shift in people's mind that I believe that knowledge takes place. Knowledge to understand better our world, but also to be connected with one another. So I do believe that the place that we have in designing data is incredible, and we have a responsibility in trying to do the best we can to transfer this knowledge across. So thank you so much for listening. And if you don't mind me, a little plug for anybody that is perhaps new to the data visualization or data design world and wants to learn more. I've also just released Domestica course, and for tonight there is a 10% discount, so just take a screenshot. The Filippo Vale talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valentina. Great. Thanks also for sharing and trying to bring all your knowledge into the topic from tonight and visualizing knowledge, and going away from data to knowledge was really nice. Yes, so I see already we have quite some questions, which is great. Please continue asking questions, also upvote questions. We are collecting them for the last round. So just keep on asking, and keep on upvoting, because we will ask the questions which are mostly upvoted. Yes, so thanks, Valentina. And Barbara, the stage is yours. Please share your screen. I will mute my microphone.
Thank you, Darian. And thank you, Valentina. That was an amazing presentation. My slides are very simple in comparison. Hello, everybody, or guten Abend. My name is Barbara Vissirini. I'm based in Berlin, in Germany. And today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about my project. But before, I wanted to explain a little bit who I am and what do I work with. So currently I work in different projects, and my focus is always the design part, but I'm very interested about information visualization, data visualization. And on the other side, I'm also very interested about education, especially in the area of language learning. And when all these three areas combine, that's when I get the most excited to work with. Today, we're going to talk about a project that lays exactly on the intersection of these three areas, which is my book that was published last year. Dieses kleine Buch ist für dich. And you might ask yourself, what does this book has to do with data and design? This little book is for dich was a project developed with the University of Applied Science Potsdam and the research group from the university, which is the Urban Complexity Lab. And it's a book with over 200 pages where we explain German grammar to non-native speakers through a new visual system that aims to make the grammar structures visible for people, especially adults that are not German, or at least not native in the German language, and they need to achieve an advanced level. To talk more about the book, we need to go from the beginning. So how did this project start? It started back in 2015 when I moved to Germany because I wanted to study. I had already done a bachelor in design, and I wanted to keep studying and do a master's here in Germany. But for that, I had to learn German first. And I had very little time to learn. I had 8 months to achieve an advanced level. So I basically ate all the learning materials I found. I tried books, I tried apps, I tried YouTube videos. And even though I was consuming all this learning material as a learner of German, the designer inside of me, of course, was also looking at how the language was presented to learners, what techniques were used to help learners understand the language behind it. So when I finally learned the language, passed the test, and got to the university, I wanted to keep looking at these materials, but now from a designer perspective. We all know German is very complex. I had this meme there, but there are like a lot of memes about how German is a very complex language. And there are many reasons why it's complex, but today I want to focus on the declension, because as soon as you start learning German, you cannot go away without learning declension. And the reason why German has so many articles, for example, is because there is a different article for each grammatical gender. So depending on the word, if it's masculine, neutral, or feminine, and depending on what case. And then the intersection of these both categories would generate a different article and a different ending. So when you're learning German, you always need to keep in mind a lot of things, but specifically these two categories. And different materials use different techniques to help learners. The most common one and basic visual technique to help learners is the highlighting. And highlighting is, well, very basic. I don't need to go much into detail. The specific thing about highlighting in languages is that it often happens in two levels. So one level is to show what part of the sentence learners have to focus. And the second level is within that part of the sentence, what specific aspects you have to be careful with. And although it is very effective to guide attention, it doesn't provide a lot of visual support for learners. So there are other materials that do that in a stronger way. A very common way to do is use color to inform the gender. So here in this example, we have green to show that the next words coming are neutral. And when there is a blue circle, then it shows the next words are masculine. And this is very helpful when you're not native, because there are no rules for what is masculine, what is neutral, what is feminine. The same technique is used for another category, which I talked in the beginning, the cases, to show what part of the sentence is nominative and what part of it is accusative. The problem of those techniques, even though they're very helpful, they cannot be combined because they basically rely only on color to explain these two things. So either you choose to visualize the gender or you see the case, and often you cannot see the intersections. Another problem is that you have to also use highlighting, because we still need to show learners what part of the sentence they need to focus their attention on. And again, since highlighting very often relies on color, this can all get very messy very quick. And here, this is just one example. There are like hundreds of different ways this is used. But I wanted to know, okay, how could we use design to create something different and something new? My first step was to really dive into the problem and understand what is happening, what are those materials, who make them, how they're made. So I contacted 2 publishers that developed those didactic books, and I asked to talk with the editor, and I talked to 1 author and 2 design agencies to understand how they work together and how they come up with solutions, like who chooses what colors to use or what techniques to use. Next to that, I also looked into other ways languages are taught worldwide. And that's when I came across the Montessori grammar symbols. And then if you're not familiar with them, I was not, is that each form, shape, and color is used to teach kids what parts of the speech is a sentence. So it was developed for kids to have a first notion of grammar and how language structures work. It's great for this specific purpose, but now I'm going to show you on the example I showed before. When we come to foreign, like non-native speakers, the categories that they need to know cannot be visualized through the system. So here you can see like the first 3 words is an article, adjective, and a noun. And the shape kind of shows how they're related. And the sizes also show, I think it's the meaning. No? The stronger meaning is the noun, so it has a bigger shape. So I was wondering, okay, this is a very interesting way to combine other things besides color to show information. So that's definitely a useful direction to take. And because she works with signs, with symbols, it gives us more room to show information, because if you just show on the text, it can be also very hard to read in the end. So those are the things that I thought was super interesting. But for our case, German and non-native speakers, the system was not working very well. So I started to collect other inspirations and ask myself, what other visual systems do we use on our daily basis to take as an inspiration? A big one was control panels, and here I was not worried about if they're good or bad examples, but more like examples of how the visuals tell us something on how to do a task, for example. Another inspiration was the famous signs for laundry and how they inform you how to wash your clothes, and street signs, how they combine colors and shape also to inform us on different aspects. Once I got like this overview of the problem, inspirations, I started to ask, okay, but now how can we really visually communicate the language? And that was the fun part, the hands-on. I started to explore really like all types of ways we can show the gender, the case, and word order, the connectors, and all different grammar types. And while developing those first drafts, I was not worried about if they were helpful or not. First, I just really wanted to see what is it possible, what can we do? And here are just some of sketches. I have a box here at home still with like all the sketches I did, because every time I would see something, I was like, oh, maybe we could use the location, or maybe we could use lines. And after a while, it kind of started naturally, the science kind of started naturally selecting what made more sense and what not. And the ones that were making sense could be put into this goals, like this aspects or this criterias. So in the end, I was choosing the combinations of visual techniques that first were able to guide the attention to relevant aspects for my target group, which were non-native speakers. Second was the signs that, or the combinations that helped explain the grammar. So they were not informing on the meaning of that word, but the syntax. So the appearance was showing somehow how that word relates to others in the sentence. The third aspect was, is it simple enough that somebody can remember? Because in the end, you don't want to have something, create a visual thing that is more complex than the language. Now you want something that is simple and that they can help, they can learn in the long term and stay there. The fourth criteria was that the entire system had to follow a consistent visual logic. And here I put on the fourth position, but actually that was the most important criteria, that the system is consistent and that they build upon itself. So learners, the things they learn on the first day, they keep taking that knowledge throughout the levels they follow. And here I'm going to show you the decisions we made for this case, the specific case I was talking about, the grammar and the case. And we decided to stick with color for gender because the grammatical gender of a word was one of the few things that does not change. So if a word is masculine, it will always be masculine. And by always showing the word with the color of the gender, it was more likely that people would remember the word together with the color. So I remember the word baum with the color green, so I remember it's masculine. We also kept using color for plural because in German, independent of the grammatical gender of a word, the plural will receive the same article. So here we didn't have to differentiate masculine from neutral, but rather show this is masculine neutral, this is, masculine plural, neutral plural, feminine plural. So we are showing what letters change through the color, but they can still see what is the grammatical gender of that word. Once we covered gender, we went to the second category, which was case. Here you can see the sentence with the colors. And the good thing about using color for gender as well was that we can then highlight the endings of the words and show how the noun was affecting the other words in the sentence. And for the cases, I chose to use forms because it was a very cool thing about the different cases in German is that they have different number of declension patterns, so to say. So the shapes, they were indicating how many different unique endings each case has. So in nominative, we have 4 different endings, but in the dative case, we only have 3 because all masculine declension and neutral declension are completely the same. So actually you just need to remember 3 and not 4. And in genitive, there are only 2 because then feminine and plural are the same. In this way, the shape of the case was not only telling learners what case it is, but was also helping them remember the different patterns. And here, because if gender and case was everything, then it would not be German because German needs to be complicated. So besides these 2 things, we also have the weak and the strong declensions. And here we decided to show then how when an article has the ending, then the adjective has the weak declension. And when the article has no ending, then the adjective has the full declension. Well, what about highlighting? Because we said in the beginning, we need to highlight. We decided to just turn off everything that was context and focus on showing the color of the part that is on focus and everything else was turned off. Everything up to here was my master thesis. And then I delivered this book and we were like, okay, we need to keep going. So that's when I joined the research group. And then we kept developing icons for other parts of the language until we covered all the structures. And then we could have all the structure shown through a specifically form. And here I cannot go through all of them because each form took such a long discussion that we need an hour for it to explain its shape. Once we had the system, we then partner with the international office from the university because the head of the international office had 25 years of experience in teaching German as a foreign language. So she helped us put this system together into a book. And when we were structuring the book, we also tried to apply the knowledge from information visualization on the order of showing things. So each chapter starts with an overview of all the structures, and then we go into an introduction of a specific category. And then in the end, the page will go into the detail of each specific structure. So it's like the Schneiderman mantra: overview first, category, and then detail on demand. So once the book came together, it took us 2 years to finish the system, finish the book. We got a grant from the Federal Foreign Office in Germany, and we were able to print 500 copies of the book. And then we delivered all of these books for free to all international students in the university. We still have a lot of copies, so all the new students that come and German is not their native language, they get a copy of the book for free. We also then were very honored to receive the Designpreis Brandenburg in 2021 in the Young Professionals category. And last year we won the German Design Award for the book. And once we got these awards, we kind of got out of the university, because until then everything was happening in the university. So I got the feedback from the students from the first edition, and in order to bring to a larger public, I started my own publisher last year, and I partnered with a German teacher, and we launched the second edition of the book and further products that use that system. If you guys are interested to know more about it, here I have our Instagram where we post little tips on German using the system, and a website from the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you that you are actually reminding me that I was not a good student in German. And thank you for, I would have loved to have that book. Somehow it's super nerdy. I wasn't aware of things, but it's so brave. We will have a discussion on that, but thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Dario, it's your turn.
Okay.
Does it work? Yes.
It's working. Good. Okay, just let me reframe a little bit. Okay. Hello, everyone. Today's presentation is about knowledge design, which is a kind of a concept I use to make sense of my profession. And currently, I'm employed at the University of Groningen, and I have this very lucky combination of appointments. I'm assistant professor of science technology at Campus Friesland. At the same time, I'm working since 2019 with the Meta Lab from Harvard University, and this will be also part of my presentation. Table of content, just to give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about. There is the first part of my presentation is about knowledge introduction, and it's mainly related to my education and my professional expertise. And the second part of my presentation is focused on 3 different projects of data visualization. that took place between 2019 and 2022. So let's start with the part of knowledge design and education. So how I started in this way because my father bought me this personal computer. So I started coding when I was very young, of course, very basic stuff in BASIC. And but then when it occurred the moment to choose the university, I chosen computer science, and probably I was wrong. But I mean, what I was missing in computer science was the visual part. When I discovered the visual part, everything changed. And it is important to say that I was studying in Milan, and Milan is known worldwide for its fame about the city of design, and there are plenty of famous designers from the past who lived and worked in that city, and a lot of affection from me is for Enzo Mari. And at the beginning of my book, I use this quote by Enzo saying drawings are not ornaments, they are words. And this is very, I mean, crucial for all of us because, I mean, it means that there is a content, there is knowledge with images. And sometimes creating an image is more difficult than write a page of text. So I think in a cultural environment in which everything is very text-based, in this moment of history, we are witnessing a shift toward visual means, toward visual language. And this is important because we have to talk about data literacy and visual literacy. And so I started with computing, and after a while, I found that I was not so bad in graphic design. This is just a layout I got from my PhD studies, but I loved to work with Illustrator, especially. I loved to work with typography, and I loved to work with Adobe Flash, for whom are old enough to remember this kind of application. And so the passage was, I mean, from one point of view, I was very good in graphic design, but I was studying coding. So at a certain point, I started working in UX design, and I practiced that when I was an assistant researcher at the university. And a certain point, and that was a big change in my career, I was employed for European Commission, and after that, I started working in Paris with Bruno Latour. And this is the outcome I did with the design team, and Bruno was intelligent enough to put together computer scientists and sociologists through the design. And it was taking a lot of people from Milan, especially from density design. And this moment was very rich to me because I was working with Donato Ricci and Danilo Guido, who are still a friend of mine and colleagues. And from time to time, we work together. But again, UX design. And next step came with the PhD. I moved to Lausanne. I got my PhD at EPFL with Frédéric Kaplan and Boris Baud. And I was working about this mapping of affinities. But let's say that, I mean, I was always working with information from different perspectives. And basically, after I left UX design, and I landed on information design, was a kind of epuration of the structure. And this is very interesting because with information design, for me at least, you can really shape the information as you want. And let's say that in this kind of complexity, in this kind of simplification, leaving the interface, I landed up to knowledge design. So what is knowledge design? Knowledge design is just a way to think about the production of culture, the production of knowledge. So it's related to the actors creating knowledge. It's related to the organization contributing. So for me, it was very important to think data visualization, even in terms of organization, because an organization allowed me to create, to have a PhD. I'm working in organization, and this kind of collectives are very important if we want to convey a message, or even if we want to create a huge work of a collaboration. And so in my thesis, I published my thesis a couple of years ago. It's called Mapping Affinities, and it's about the organizational charts of a large organization. The good news is that the book is for free, so you can just download it from my website, from the publisher. But what was really interesting to me during the days, during the period of the PhD, is that I enter a little bit in this complexity of knowledge design. So, for example, there is a very nice essay by Johanna Drucker about designers and the digital means they are using today, because in the past, designers were more industrial designers. And I remember when I was very young and I told to a professor that I was a digital designer, he started laughing to me. And now we have digital designers everywhere. So, I mean, even to have this historical overview by Joanna was very nice, because really we have created a professional activity in the last 30 years, and it's just amazing. And my other reference is my colleague and professor Jeffrey Snapp, who wrote several texts about knowledge design. And what Jeffrey is bringing about this is about the reflection, how we produce the knowledge. And really, even now, when we are working as information designers, we are really in the chain of creating the knowledge. And the knowledge is very complex, because we have procedures, we have regulations, we have formats, we have forms, we deliver presentation. It's complex, and basically we can relocate all this imaginary in a networks of relation. And this idea of a network connecting information with people and organization was very nice to me as definition of knowledge design, because it was also very close to the point of view of Bruno Latour and his relational approach to science. So let's say that this was my background. And now let's start with the second part, which is very visual. So I like to work with data visualization, but especially I like to work with collective of people. I love to work with a team, and I also like the idea to make the most of organizations, because as I told you before, the creation of knowledge passes through organization. It's not just left to individuals. So for example, in these 3 projects, I was working with 3 different organizations. In these cases are just museums. So the first one is the EPFL pavilions, directed by Sarah Kenderdine at EPFL in Lausanne, Switzerland. Second one is very famous, is the Ars Electronica Center, based in Linz, Austria. And the third one is very close to the Meta Lab headquarters, and it's the Harvard Art Museum's recently restored by Renzo Piano. So 3 projects in 3 different places. So the first project is called Supervision, and Supervision was created to celebrate the 50th anniversary of my university, the EPFL. So I was invited to create a representation of the organization. And this is an overlook of the university and how you can tell of the last 50 years of the university. And as you can see, I mean, the building full of halls is the famous library created by architects Studio Sana, and the longer vertical stripe is the EPFL pavilion created by Kengo Kuma. And this is the place in which the exhibition for the 50th anniversary took place, and it's beautiful place, wooden made. And what I started thinking with Sara and my colleague Philippe Riviera was to create a visualization of the doctoral thesis, because when you think about the university and doctoral candidates are placed exactly between the teachers and the students. So we started digging into the data set, and we created this complex visualization made with UMAP, in which theses are just spaced out according to their lexical distance. So no metadata, nothing, just a frequency of a text. And what is interesting, and you can see from this picture, is that you see here all the doctoral theses, and the highlighted areas correspond to faculties. So in this kind of a visualization, you can see that there is a continuity between text and faculty. And this is the final result we created. So it's a kind of a big timeline, which is circular. At the center of this timeline, you have the structure, and basically you have a selector going through the timeline. In this moment, we are between 2002 and 2003. And what you are seeing popping up was an act of simplification we did, because we were showing 8,000 theses. So basically the ones that are bumping up are the theses belonging to this particular selection. And what was interesting, just to come back to the idea of organization, of establishment of the physical spaces, is that we created a digital installation to show this work to the public. And this is a picture of it. Second project, the cartography of coronavirus, took place in 2021 at Ars Electronica Center during the festival. And even in this case was a collective project created with Evelyn van der Vogt, Elian Kazernat, and other colleagues from Garamantis based in Berlin, and from Ars Electronica Solution. So this is the center of Ars Electronica, which is a beautiful museum on the Danube. And each year in September, there is a week which is full of events and visitors. So that was the first time the festival went physical after the pandemic. And this was the reason why we wanted to reflect about this topic. And we created a huge visualization with all the scientific papers published in the last basically 1 year and a half during the pandemic by scientists, because the idea was to show this large amount of work from the scientists that usually are not visible. They are working behind the curtains. So the idea was really create an astonishing visualization, because here we are visualizing more than 500,000 of papers, and show to the public what scientists were doing. And what is great, I think, about this place is that there is an immersive theater. So what we did is to present this visualization to the public, and it was live because they have a great system. So the idea was really with this kind of a complexity in information design, you have to talk, you have to create a relationship with the public. So in this moment, I'm speaking to the public, saying what they are seeing. And in this way, I provide visitors, spectators, the tool to make a sense of what they are seeing. And then create even a common space through which we can create a discussion, and we can create, of course, knowledge. Very last project that was presented last year at Harvard Art Museums in Cambridge. It's called Surprise Machines, and it's inspired to the work of Alan Turing and his famous paper about artificial intelligence. So the point of the argument of Turing was, it was very simple. Turing was saying that machine can surprise humans. So the idea to create a surprise machine is to create a surprise to the visitors. So we had these beautiful settings because the center of the museum is entirely transparent. You have this glass roof at the top, and there is a special space. There was a special place for digital installation. And what we wanted to provide the visitor with was an entire visualization of the archives of the museum. And this is very important because when you go to a museum, in that case, you see just a small percentage of the belongings of the item of the museums. And in this case, at the museum, in all over the history of this museum, the galleries were able to show just 1% of the total amount of items they have in the archives. So what we did was to create a visualization with all the images of items from the archive. And it was a beautiful collaboration with Lindsay Derry and other colleagues from the Meta Lab, and also the DH Lab from Yale University. And we created this beautiful visualization. And the visualization was usable through the concept of zooming. So basically, by zooming, you could enter in specific area of this shape, of this form. And basically, the items in that specific area are, are similar according to matrix of artificial intelligence. So, for example, in this slide, you can see that in that specific area of the image, and we are visualizing around 200,000 objects. You see some handmade portraits. You can recognize Gandhi, and you can even recognize Einstein in the middle. So it was very a digital installation for exploration, for browsing into the collection, for thinking what we can see and what is not visible. And this is finally the digital installation at the museum, and through a very nice collaboration with colleagues of the Meta Lab, we created this interface able to capture body language. And so we were playing with zoom functions just by using the movement of the body. It was something about research, something explorative, but something very nice to explore in this moment. My presentation is finished. I invite you to look for my material on my website. Everything I do is open access and open source, so you can check it and download my book, and I thank you for your attention.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you close the screen share?
Sure.
Yes, perfect. Cool. Super. So the talks are done. Thank you, Dario. It was, I'm actually thinking now all the time, I don't know if that's kind of the pattern between the three talks, that maybe the topic of visualizing knowledge means to collaborate with experts. So somehow it seemed to be the pattern that all of you love to or needed to work with specialists in a special field. So maybe that's kind of because in the other events, when there were people more kind of diving into the data and finding their own conclusions. Maybe I'm just putting a hypothesis. Let's see. Okay, so thank you also for all the questions. There were a lot of questions, and I'm also surprised. Thanks a lot also that you have been liking on YouTube the video. That helps a lot for the algorithms, I guess, of YouTube. So let's get to the mostly upvoted question. It's always the first speaker gets the most questions, and that's also because of time. So I will read the first question, which is directed to Valentina. But I guess this question is also relevant and can be also answered by all of us, all of you, sorry. So the question is, Valentina, do you think that in the era of information overload, designers tend to oversimplify information to satisfy a hurried and distracted audience? Welcome in the age.
Very good question. Do I think the designers tend to do that? I don't know if designers tend to do that. There is definitely a path in the design process where we can simplify the information. And I think it depends, again, on the purpose and who we're talking to. Simplification is a strategy, right? When we have lots of data and it's just too complex, sometimes we do need to simplify it. Right now, I'm actually going through a brutal process of simplification with this encyclopedia for kids. We're actually testing it with 12 kids, and the feedback that we're getting is pretty brutal for my soul. I need to go back and remove. And ultimately, it's a dialogue, right? As I was saying in my presentation, we give voice to data, and this voice can be complex or simple, depending on who we're communicating to. There isn't just one path that fits all. But I would say that perhaps the definition of data visualization can be often seen as simplification, right? We're simplifying the data. Mm-hmm. And I say that perhaps a better term is clarification. Sometimes simplification is clarifying. Yes. Sometimes actually not flattening the complexity of reality, but walking through the audience through this complexity and providing the full picture is the way to go. Again, it depends on the purpose and who we're reaching to.
Yeah. And creating an entry point, maybe the first easy entry point.
Yeah, not to overwhelm. So if we do visualize the whole thing, the whole complex world, we don't want to overwhelm and like just vomit everything at once. How can we take the audience through steps?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Barbara, Dario, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would also say that it really depends, because simplification can be positive if you're taking into consideration the needs of the person. Like if you're only showing what they need to know, then simplification can be good. But if you don't have the needs of the final user good formulated, then oversimplification can be a negative thing. But I also think it depends on the use of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my professor Bruno Latour introduced a few years ago this concept of a reduction. And basically he says that if we want to study a complex subject, if we want to study society, the process of reduction is obligatory. So what we are doing is to reduce the complexity of a society, to make it visible, to make it graspable. And what we have to do is that just to let the viewers know that there is a process behind. In the creation of a visualization, there are assumptions, there are parameters, and so on. So yes, we are simplifying to make stuff understandable, but even the viewer has to know that there is a process behind this.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, interesting. I go to the next question. Barbara, I will summarize actually some questions. They're going in the same direction. I think people are curious to know, is there feedback from people learning German with your book? Kind of, how are you following up with their feedback, and what impact does it have on you now?
We have some feedback. The most concrete ones are from the students from the university, because now we have German courses. They don't use the book in the course because it was not made for teaching. It's meant more as an extra help. And we know that the book alone, for some people, can be overwhelming because they need guidance on how to deal with the book. But that's something that it's not the fault of the system, but because we need a whole structure. One feedback that for me was super interesting is somebody saying that with this book, they finally started understanding Spanish. And I asked myself, why they're understanding Spanish? Because the book is German. And she said, well, because with your book, I understood that grammar has like words, they have relationship to others. And she was not aware of that before, how words interact. And she's like, yeah, I'm understanding German, but I'm also understanding Spanish. Spanish, she also learned as a foreign language. But in general, people really like the fact that they can see the gender in all of the words, and they really like the shapes for the cases to remember the endings. Yeah.
I mean, it would be so interesting actually to continue with the idea to analyze English and also other languages, and then to come to that lingua franca, or kind of the Esperanto, that you say, okay, actually we have the pattern where they're similar, and how you could kind of decode the matrix behind it. Yeah.
I could also see it being used for studying linguistics and comparative linguistics. And another interesting use that surprised me is, I know that there are some Germans who are, they cannot hear, and they're using the book to learn grammar because they also learn German as a foreign language, because the sign language is their first language. So they also don't know why is the wall feminine, or why is the... that was a nice surprise, but it was not developed for that. So it's not optimal for that public, but there is potential there.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting. I guess, Valentina and Dario, you don't have anything to add to this question. Okay.
It was fascinating, the system, and I think it could apply to other languages. Absolutely.
Cool. So, okay, there's again a question. That question could be also good for everyone. So the one upvoted question is there a permanent team of scientists, journalists, and other experts you collaborate with? That was actually directed to Valentina.
No permanent staff for me. I'm a like one-person studio, but I do collaborate regularly with other people, as you've seen in my projects. They're all the results of great collaborations, and usually I do go back to the same people that I work with. So yeah, I do have a team of people that I work with.
People watching now can approach you. That yes, was an application, kind of.
Absolutely, always good to connect with other people.
Good, cool. Dario, do you work permanently with other colleagues, scientists? Is it like project to project based?
Yes, but in general, if we have fun working together, we try to still working together. It's a little bit complex in academia because having fundings takes time. So a lot of time we are working even with a private company supporting the sponsoring or research. But let's say that, yes, once you have a budget, you can ask friends, colleague, because I mean, ideas are around, and there is a particular moment in which you have this consolidation of everything and you start a project. But yes, I have a personal network of friends and colleagues.
Barbara, you also work, right? You said you work with the linguistic expert.
Yeah, I have my own publisher, but I also work part-time for another publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, and there it's also school books, so also in the educational department.
Cool. That's good. Collaborating is good. I'm just that I have a question for Dario. Dario, it says in scientific experiments, it's necessary that it can be repeated to verify the results. Does your visualization also have this requirement that it can be replicated?
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe in this way of doing science. I mean, I believe it exists, but I'm doing different stuff. That paradigm can be applied to chemistry, to pharmacology, and this kind of stuff. But in my case, I like to create a complex visualization. And the point is not to recreate the same visualization, but to create an object, a visual object to trigger conversation. So let's say my very goal is the conversation and it's not the medium itself.
Mm-hmm. Sounds cool. Yeah, sounds good. I mean, it's good to be critical also on research and science. It's good. Good. I pick one more. I just lost the line. Sorry. Okay. I had a good one. Oh my God. Okay. Let's fill the gap until I find it with the most frequent question. What tools are you using to do your graphics? But I'm looking for the other question in the meantime. Sorry. So Valentina, are you using Illustrator?
Is it for me?
Yeah, it's
okay,
for everyone. Yeah, what are its tools?
So yes, Data Illustrator is the kind of like go-to software. The kind of like link between the spreadsheet and Data Illustrator is sometimes RawGraph or Data Illustrator. So Adobe Illustrator is the go-to software, but the link in between the spreadsheet and Adobe Illustrator is Data Illustrator, Charticulator, or RawGraphs. To creating interactive infographics or data visualization or this data documentary that I showed you, I collaborate with smarter people than me who can develop.
Okay, good. Dario, what tools are you using?
I mean, in the project I showed to you, I mainly use JavaScript and Python. For example, it's interesting to know that supervision was entirely developed with Observable. So, and it's still available on the platform. Otherwise, and that was the first time for me, the project with Ars Electronica was entirely developed with Unity, which is usually used in video games and this kind of stuff. But to have, I mean, very complex structures and a lot of visual elements, the only way, and we're talking about millions of elements, especially if you think about the letters, the text, the only way is to go through video games techniques.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I just have to write it down. One of them I didn't know. Cool. Barbara, you're in the...
I use, mainly Adobe Illustrator as well. And
cool.
design, but...
Super. There is actually the interesting one. I was first I lost it because it's a long one, and then I was thinking about. So what would be your advice on a process for a project about data visualization? Here it comes. That needs to be scalable and flexible, like for dashboards. The kind of for I would ask all of you. So kind of how do you think your approach would be kind of scalable? What do you think? Or should I read it again? Was it kind of too long, the question?
I can go. I do design scalable application for clients, like dashboards and stuff. And I think the principles are still the same. You need to know who you're designing for and what type of knowledge they want to gather from the dashboard. It's really important that we don't just go into rendering the data with whatever device we decide to use, whether it's a line chart or a bar chart. We want to know how they're going to be using these line charts, how they're going to be using these bar charts. What type of extremes of data we might see. So they kind of like, what if we have very small data points? What if we have very big data points? Those kind of consideration to make it scalable. So yeah, I think like the same principles that we're adopting for non-scalable projects, they also apply to scalable projects. And then it's also about defining a system from the beginning where you can just reuse the same components over and over.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally. Dario, that's also
for me, it's the same. I mean, the idea of using components is a very good point. And what is interesting for me is that each time I have a new project, I start from a sketch. I don't want to be fixed on a specific design process. So I think that creativity cannot be schematized in this workflow that are frequently used by business companies. But I like to think to take the times, especially if you can. It's great lucky to have time to develop projects specifically.
Such a good point, Dario. Pen and paper, such an underrated tool. And we didn't mention it actually before when we were asked what tool to use. Pen and paper, first tool, always use. Sketching. It's all about problem solving, isn't it?
Yeah. Barbara has shown it also, the sketches,
Yeah, and I was also going to say, like this last point, Valentina said, problem solving can only be done if you really understand the problem you're trying to solve. So I think for any project, spending a very good amount of time understanding the problem is always a good start for you create something.
And also communicating the problem, right?
Yeah, there's actually a very good talk on data design, but I don't remember the name of the person, but he was talking about the science of asking questions, not creating data just because you can create data, but understand why are you doing it, what problem.
That's what Stefan,
yeah. There was a lot of Stefans on that round.
Yeah, exactly. That was the Stefan session. Now I have a Italian surname session.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I have one last question, actually a short one maybe, but it's always a challenge, at least for us. At what point do you decide what medium you will kind of, the output of the concept? Is it going to be an installation? Is it going to be a website? Is it going to be a poster? It's going to be a book? Do you have that questions, or is it from the beginning clear kind of what is the end medium you will kind of put your product to? No. Barbara says no.
In my case, I never know the medium, and sometimes you have to choose what is doable.
Budget wise,
project wise, money wise, time wise. But in the beginning, I never knew.
Cool. Yeah.
I have a very nice example. I was working with Bonnefanten Museum in Maastricht a few years ago, and we were working on Città Analoga by Aldo Rossi. We created a beautiful folded map with all the instruction, details, blah, blah, blah. And then the committer told us, but what about the digital part? You're supposed to be a digital humanist, but this is just a printed map. And so basically we added on the top augmented reality, able to recognize images. So, you know, sometimes just conversation or problems can be transformed into new solution. And this is really nice about creativity, I think.
Okay, cool.
And for me,
Valentina?
it depends. Sometimes I receive a brief that is very defined. So like design a dashboard and, it's going to be on desktop, or perhaps, I don't know, a mobile first application or an app that just lives on a smartphone. Sometimes it's an exhibition. Sometimes the museum actually requires something quite specific, even if it's for an exhibition like the London Under the Microscope. Being an animation was actually a requirement.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something interactive, but because of the future proof of the piece, they wanted the piece to be able to play in 20 years or 30 years. And with code, you might not have the same result. So an animation, a video is just more straightforward. Other times I don't have a medium until we kind of like go through the strategy to the ideation, and then we decide what channel maybe to pitch to the client, or if it's a self-initiated project, if the budget allows, then we can experiment.
Nice. Yes, so please stay with me in Zoom. I will say just now, thank you for being with us. All the 680 people who joined so far. And it was a beautiful evening, and I'll see you next time, probably in June. So you will be updated. Oh, the light went even off. Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.